So we both watched Batman Caped Crusader, which came out this year, 2024, and is a spiritual successor to Batman the Animated Series. For the most part, it felt like one. The animation was not 100% the animated series, but it was pretty damn close, and it was nowhere near the style of the new Batman adventures, which in my opinion is a good thing.
I agree, but I would say that the animation, or maybe the visual approach, was something that I thought didn't work in this show.
How so?
I thought the backgrounds were fine, but doing the super digital line drawings and everything, that all felt so clean that it stood out too much from the backgrounds. It felt like it did not fit.
Okay, that's interesting because I thought the backgrounds, the art style was captured, but I felt like they were too simple.
I would probably agree if I was looking more at that, but I would also say that, I guess I would say the cinematography, the way they presented things visually was relatively very flat and uninteresting as well, from like a storytelling perspective.
I definitely agree. I thought character-wise, they had more curved lines than later DC Animated Universe stuff, like Justice League Unlimited, or your and my favorite, the Zeta Project.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with the character designs themselves, which I remember not liking the direction that the DC Animated Universe was going in as it went on.
Yeah, everything got very pointy, sharp.
And very small legs and big upper body.
Even back in the 90s, it was super impressive that Warner Brothers was able to give characters guns, real guns, and have them actually shoot at people. Because back then, there were so many rules against it, which is why most cartoons from that era have people using futuristic science guns, and they don't actually kill people. They'll just stun them or whatever.
Yeah, the show where that comes up a lot is the 90s Spider-Man. Spider-Man couldn't even punch people most of the time.
And because this show came out this year, they can go even further. I mean, we actually see people not only getting shot at, but get shot, and they die on screen.
Which, in theory, having less restrictions sounds like it could be better, but I felt like they pushed it too far, and it felt like it didn't fit. Sometimes with the language, too, of trying too hard to make it feel mature, but then the rest of it just felt like a Batman cartoon.
Yeah, lots of casual swearing.
It was more distracting than anything else.
Yeah, definitely. Story-wise, all the episodes are loosely linked to a main thread of Harvey Dent's descent into Two-Face, which I liked, but at times it was really fighting to stay on point, because there were episodes that shot off into completely different directions, like throwing in actual supernatural ghosts, or people who suck the life energy out of people. And I was torn because I liked that variety of stuff, but it made it tough to fix onto what the show had decided was the most important thing. And I think the small amount of episodes is mostly to blame for that. Because in something like Justice League, there was this overarching threat, but the standalone episodes didn't feel out of place. So maybe a longer runtime than these, 11 episodes would have helped balance it more.
Yeah, I think it was 10 episodes. But even something like the Brave and the Bold Batman show did the same thing, where you had something going on in the background that it would eventually get back to at the end of the season, but each of the episodes still worked along the way as its own thing.
And that show was overall more humorous. Do you think that helped too?
No, I think that was an unrelated aspect of it in that case, because the main storyline would still be relatively serious. So I think they were just better written, better plotted, I guess I would say.
Okay. There was a little bit of humor, throwback humor, from the animated series in this show. Like the Catwoman one comes to mind, where her maid ends up taking all her money and just leaving at the end.
Yeah, I mean, from the way you're talking about it, I'm thinking you probably liked this show more than I did. I didn't really feel that any of the individual episodes or the larger overall thing really worked. I think it goes back to some of the same stuff that you're saying, where too much of it feels unfocused and kind of random, like they just kind of throw stuff in there that doesn't really fit together, and without really developing the characters themselves enough. It's more like things happen with them, but they're not really, it doesn't really usually have as much to do with them as people. It's just that they're kind of involved with something that's going on.
So would you have preferred they threw out the whole Harvey Dent thing and just stuck to standalone episodes for all 10?
No, I think part of the problem is that it's a Batman show, but Batman himself doesn't matter for almost any of it other than being kind of the, not Deus Ex Machina, but, kind of the thing that comes in and fixes things. And it's not even until the very last episode, I think, that he got any kind of character development whatsoever.
That is true.
And I felt like I never had a handle on him as a character. And really, it made me feel like the show as a whole just felt like they said, we're going to do a Batman show. And that was all the thought that went into it as far as a character side of things. It was just, it's Batman. So by default, you don't need anything else. It's just Batman.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. Because, yeah, I guess I hadn't had that thought of Batman not really being developed as a character. But I was coming at it from the perspective of not just this being a standalone show, but as being an extension of other Batman stuff I had already seen.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that was a problem, though, is it felt like that's what they were relying on, was just the fact that it is Batman. That's what's going to get you to watch. But right from the first episode, I was wondering what the point of it was, what the point of this particular Batman show was on its own, but also what's the point of following these characters around? Nothing that they're doing really feels like it means anything, or I don't know, like you can look at the 90s Batman series and, you know, the characters are developed and things happen to them and you start caring about what's going on. You want to see where the plot's going to go, and then it'll wrap up in a satisfying episode, and then you also have kind of running subplots at the same time that carry on each next time the character shows up. But in here, it just felt very flat. No depth to the characters, no depth to the stories.
Do you think it could have been fixed if these 10 episodes did not throw in so many other characters and just focused on the main cast?
In theory, yes, but I think it's more a problem of just the writing in general, because if you have less episodes, I mean, even, again, going back to the 90s one, each individual episode works. And in this show, I felt like none of them really worked that well. Even if you have, for example, characters that only show up in that episode, it didn't feel like you got satisfying arcs for them. It didn't feel like you had a reason for following them for even just that one episode. And I feel the same way for the individual episodes as I do for the overall season.
Honestly, the episode that felt the most like the old show, but also the most out of place, was the first one. I expected that to set up the writing for the rest of the show, but after watching all of them, it was the most disconnected. You got the Penguin on a giant cruise ship, and on the upper deck is a giant rocket gun that fires huge explosive shells into the city. It was very Silver Age. And the rest of the show, while it was at times lighthearted, never got to that level of ridiculousness.
I don't even remember that stuff in the first episode. But I will say, I thought about like some of the stuff you mentioned earlier of like the episode with the ghost, the gentleman ghost, and the girl sucking out people's souls or whatever. That stuff didn't feel like it fit in with the noir feeling.
So character-wise, there was a good spread, and I liked the episodes that were almost fully dedicated to, that one thing. But again, that was me coming at it as looking at this show as an extension of the animated series. And I liked how when characters came in, this show was not trying to make them a version that was so over the top and new. It tried to keep them with the rest of the tone of the show.
From my perspective, I guess it could have been worse. I definitely got a bad feeling right from the start when it was like, oh, look, it's 2024. We're going to race swap characters. We're going to gender swap characters. I was like, just give me a f***ing Batman show. To me, it just felt very pandery in that way. It's not like you don't have minority characters that you can use. Of all characters, why does Flass need to be changed like that? I thought that was ridiculous. And I'm saying this as a minority. Obviously, I don't have problems with minorities. That's not the problem. For me, it just feels pointless, like pointless changes just to be like, hey, look, it's 2024. I really don't like that approach in anything. There are times when you can do something to make a new version of a character and make it work and make it feel deliberate and intentional. But in here, it just felt like they said, we might as well just change this character just because. It didn't feel like it was there for a reason.
I thought it was really weird that one of the subplots was Bruce being a total dick to Alfred.
Yeah, that was another thing that put me off from episode 1 was him calling him Pennyworth. It was like, what are they trying to do?
Yeah, and then in the last episode, he starts correcting himself and he says, oh, I should call you Alfred, because that's your name.
The one character beat for Batman in the entire thing.
And Fox brought it up at one point that Bruce treats the help like shit, but Alfred raised him.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it made sense. Another thing that put me off from the first episode, and this is something that I thought got better as it went on, I did think the show in general got better after that first episode, because I really did not like that first episode. It was the voice acting. It felt voice actor-y in the first episode. It didn't feel like they were playing their characters. It felt like they were reading their lines. It almost felt like a rehearsal or something.
And let's be clear, I don't know if you agree with me, but from my perspective, you cannot touch how great Andrea Romano was back in the DC Animated Universe days.
Yes, I agree.
She was so good.
And to be clear, she was the casting director for all the voices and stuff.
And the voice direction, too.
She knew what she was doing.
If you're not familiar with her or her work, it's definitely worthwhile to check it out. So going into the show, the bar was already set so high, and I didn't expect it to reach that level, and it did not by any means. But like you said, it was very flat. The guy who voiced Bruce and Batman, Hamish Linklater, he did the separate Bruce Wayne Batman voice thing, but he didn't use enough emotion in either mode. It was so monotonous, like someone who was just imitating Kevin Conroy and just reading the lines. Kevin Conroy not only hit the appropriate tone, but he could take that tone and move it all over the emotional spectrum, and that didn't happen here at all.
Right, he was a good actor for the part.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. This, like you're saying, it sounded very much like it was just trying to sound like Kevin Conroy. It felt like that was the priority over anything else. And I felt like that was the way they approached the show for a lot of aspects of it. How do we make it feel like the 90s show instead of how do we make this work as an element on its own? You know, you can be inspired by the 90s show, you can be influenced by it, whatever, and you've still got Bruce Timm involved in everything, but make them work in the context of this show instead of just saying, hey, remember the 90s show?
Yeah, and I think throwing Bruce Timm's name as a marketing tactic is a little bit silly because Bruce Timm, it's not like he went away decades ago and hasn't done anything since. He's been involved in so many projects over the years. And even in the animated series, it wasn't just Bruce Timm. Like, his name's on everything, but there were so many other people that made that show what it was.
Right. I think something that a lot of Batman fanboys, I'm going to say, would probably complain about, and I did think this was just a weird choice, I guess, but the character of Harley Quinn, be Harley Quinn, without any connection to the Joker. I mean, I talked about in one of our What We Watched videos how I don't like the modern version of Harley Quinn from Suicide Squad and all that. I like her in the animated series. Part of why she worked was because she was comic relief.
Well, she was made for that show.
But in this show, she's clearly there because she's a popular character, but this version didn't feel like she had anything to her.
Speaking of that, I knew what the post-credits ending was going to be before I even watched the last episode because everything is so dumb and predictable now.
Yeah.
I thought the ending for this story worked fine for the run of episodes it was telling, but no, the show just said no. Forget the story we just told you because, the Joker.
Yeah.
So idiotic.
That's been I feel like the Batman approach for everything ever since, it worked in Batman Begins. Everything till now has just been, when's the Joker going to show up?
And are there really people out there who would have been upset had they not done a Joker tease?
Yes.
Ugh, give me a break. I enjoyed watching it.
I didn't. I mostly thought it was boring, which again was because they didn't give me a reason to care about the characters or compelling storylines, a sense of purpose besides we're going to make another Batman show. And remember the 90s? Here's the 90s. So yeah, you definitely liked it more than I did. I didn't think it was terrible.
If I took a step back and looked at it as a standalone thing, I would like it less, but I wouldn't dislike it.
Well, it was making me think of the one that was called The Batman. How I kind of felt the same way about that one, where it was like, what is the point of this show other than being another Batman show? But that show, I thought, got better as it went on, partially because it started developing characters more, in particular Robin and Batgirl. But I thought it handled Batman basically the same way this show did, where he's just there and it's just Batman. And you just kind of go along with it because you like Batman and you want to see a Batman show. And yes, that's why I watched this, because I like Batman and I wanted to see a Batman show. But I wanted it to be more substantial than it turned out to be.
Well, maybe this one will follow the same trend and get better as it goes on if they decide to make more.
Yeah, but after this first season, I can say I wouldn't be interested in watching more, unless I hear that it gets a lot better or something.
I'll let you know.
Okay.
I'll call Bruce Timm and I'll say, yo, I haven't gotten your Patreon money this month. So, those are our thoughts on Batman Caped Crusader. So if you're on the fence, this probably didn't help you either way. But that's not our purpose. Our purpose is just to talk about what we thought about it.
Correct.
The thumbnail for this video is probably just going to be a pretty simple thumbnail, because I'm just imagining now, thumbnails that are just such clickbait, where it's like the absolute perfection of Batman Caped Crusader, and then somebody's face, their head is literally exploding. Or the other side would be the complete
failure in all caps and big letters.
Or like, why is this show so terrible? You know, and terrible's underlined 6 times, and there's 2 red question marks, and the person's face is just bafflement. Like somebody told them 2 + 2 = 5.
We do get a lot of comments where people seem to say, like, the shtick of the channel is shitting on everything, or like, why do a review of something if you don't like it? Which doesn't make sense as a question. Like, that defeats the purpose of a review.
Right.
If it's something you already know you like, I don't know. I mean, you can still talk about it. There's no reason you can't, we talk about things that we liked. We talk about things that we didn't like.
And I don't think in any sense, the things we talk about, we only say negative things.
Yeah.
But I think that's sometimes only what people hear.
And I mean, we can only give our opinions. This is what we thought.
So, thanks for watching.
And go watch some of our other videos. I swear some of them are positive in there somewhere.
You only gave this episode an A. I guess you hated it.